Welcome to Speaking Cinema, series movie Jibber Jabber, a movie podcast coming to you from the grid in a computer on planet Earth. Listen to us Jibber Jabber every single Monday on Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud. Follow us Twitter, Instagram, at Speaking Cinema. Social media presence is there.
It's there and it's powerful.
Do unto it what you will. If you like what you hear and you're so inclined, help us out with a review. Come on. What is it?
Throw one out there.
You know, what is it?
Is the timbre of my voice just not soothing enough? Let me know.
Fill your ear holes with our gravelly voices. I am your host, Master Control Unit, known as Mr. Jibber Jabber. With me today is, as always, is my digitized user, Kevin.
That's me, in a flannel shirt.
We are Speaking Cinema. We watch a movie, then we watch it, then we talk about it, having had seen it. Our own personal exploration of the medium, destination, parts unknown. Trapped inside an electronic arena where love and escape do not compute. This time on the Jibber Jabber, step inside the computer world, Tron. 1982's Tron.
Is that the actual tagline?
Those were both taglines from the movie.
Wow.
Right? They did not know what they were doing with the taglines. Part of our celebration of the summer of 82, where many seminal pop culture movies came out, very influential. Tron, one of them. Written and directed by Steve Linsenberger, starring Jeff Bridges and no one else.
I was hoping there'd be somebody else like, oh, that guy's totally famous now. It's on ER.
Or
nope.
Anyone else is starring, because you could not make the argument that anyone else deserves the accolade of having starred in this movie.
No.
Produced by Walt Disney Productions, distribution, Buena Vista Distribution. If you're not familiar, a hacker/arcade owner, Kevin Flynn, is digitally broken down into a data stream by a villainous software known as the Master Control and reconstituted into the internal 3D graphical world of computers. It is there, in the ultimate blazing, colorful, geometrically intense landscape of cyberspace, that Flynn joined forces with Tron to outmaneuver the Master Control program that holds them captive in the equivalent of a gigantic, infinitely changing computer game. Credit to IMDb. Took that from IMDb. No user left there, so anonymous. So whoever wrote that.
That about sums it up.
Bit of background. Tron, brainchild of Steve Linsenberger, an animator. Inspiration came when way back in 1976, the Centennial, Kev.
Man, he's really thinking ahead on this one.
Or not far enough. When he was looking at a sample reel from a computer firm, and the same year he saw Pong for the first time and thought, hey, quote, I realized that there were these techniques that could be very suitable for bringing video games and computing visuals to the screen. And at that moment, the whole concept flashed in my mind. He wanted to make a movie about being inside a game. Okay. The movie, Tron, is very well known for its very distinctive visual style. And if you know anything about Tron and you're listening to this program, you know.
You know exactly
what we're talking about. You know what it looks like. Tron was shot in 65mm Super Panavision, except for the computer-generated layers, which were shot on VistaVision, which was anamorphic 35mm and Super 35mm.
It's a lot of film processing.
Yeah. And then they were blown up to 65. So it's a 65mm movie, which is equivalent to roughly IMAX.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Most of the effects are not CG. Most of them are hand-drawn animation, rotoscoping, and matte paintings. Only 20 minutes of the movie are CG. Scenes that show digital terrain or patterns or include vehicles, such as the light cycles, the tanks, and the flying ships. As of this recording, you can find this movie on all major DHG retailers, Blu-rays, a great Laserdisc from back in the day.
Ooh.
If you're a Laserdisc enthusiast.
If that's how you roll.
Or watch it on VHS, you nostalgic cunts. You all wish it was still 1991. I know you.
It's also on HBO Go, I discovered. After I got my Blu-ray from Netflix.
Yeah, HBO, where everyone, goes to watch things from their childhood.
Like,
anyways.
You got Dick Tracy and Tron on here? Afternoon is set.
Did you watch Dick Tracy?
No, I did not.
Okay. For a later date. Kev, have you heard of this movie?
Have heard, yes.
What do you know about it? What are your thoughts? Have you seen it?
I have seen it.
Answer these questions.
I'm getting there. I have seen it. I did not see it when I was a child, though, like most people would have. I saw it first time was in college. I was at a friend's house. It was just like after class, and we were hanging out, and we randomly put Tron on, and just kind of sat and watched Tron. Were substances involved? I can neither confirm nor deny, but they were there.
If I guess a substance, will you say yes or no?
Sure.
Mescaline.
Why not?
All right.
But yeah, that was the first time I saw Tron.
I see.
First and only time.
I have never seen Tron. I have seen the sequel, Tron Legacy, that came out in 2000, blah, 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 blah. And it's always been one of those things that I've been meaning to see. It's a movie people really loved, your friends. It's very influential because filmmakers love it. Like anything that glows is like it glows like Tron.
Yeah, that's the Tron look.
I remember I was like in the early days of the internet. There's like one of these like BuzzFeed style sites that have since gone away, but they had a keyboard that was like all underlit. And it's like, it's a Tron keyboard, and it's like, it wasn't an official Tron keyboard, but anything that is neon blue.
If it has neon highlights and glows and looks vaguely scientific, they call it Tron. It's just that style.
Yeah, I always wanted to see it. I feel like I never went to the videos. I'm sure I did. And especially after like my brother moved away to college, I'm sure I went to the movie rental store by myself. I feel like there's a huge swath of time where I was going to the video rental store and like I'd be like, let's get Dagon, let's get Tron, and I always get over,
Yeah.
But I always wanted to see Dagon too. I never saw it.
What is that?
It's directed by Stuart Gordon. It's a kind of a H.P. Lovecraft thing.
Okay, no, I've never heard of
The
that.
box cover is a blue face with a bunch of teeth, which to someone who is not a horror aficionado is a red flag, and to me was an oasis in the desert. Come drink these supple waters.
Give it to me, white teeth.
Yes. Sequel, pretty bad story-wise. Visuals were good. Long stretches away from the good visuals, though. Like, there's like this weird, like, city.
I remember the preamble just being forever in that movie.
Oh, did you see it?
Yeah, I've seen the sequel.
Okay, so you've seen the sequel, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, like the Jeff Bridges, one day, I got in, and then Daft Punk comes in, which I do like that beginning a lot.
Yeah.
But that movie sucks as, like, it feels like half the movie you spend at his house on the hill.
Yep.
It's like, I want to be in Tron City or wherever the grid city, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
How does all this crazy shit work?
Also, everybody was so hyped because Daft Punk was doing the score, and that score was kind of lame.
That score was like the first quarter of the movie with Daft Punk, and then it went into like violins and shit.
Yep.
And it's like, okay.
It was disappointing. So.
Also, I was very confused in that movie because Tron is a character, not a name of the place.
Yep. I feel if you ask that to a lot of people, they wouldn't know. If you ask, like, what is Tron in Tron? And they would probably say, it's the computer world, right?
Yeah.
Tron's a dude.
Which would make sense because Tron is short for electronic, so it's the electronic world.
Yeah.
It's the world of Tron.
Yep.
But instead, it's a guy's name in the world's the world. What?
And Tron is kind of even a side character almost in this movie.
Well,
but we'll get there.
Yeah. I've not seen it, so no fucking spoilers.
That's true.
But Kevin, what are your expectations? I'm going to go ahead and cut you off here and say that my expectations are to get my fucking mind blown visually, story-wise. Like, I want like the Thing level, like Aliens, the Thing. Like, I want this movie to be a seminal work that I will then chase the ripoffs for in trying to chase that feeling.
I mean, it's summer of '82. We're holding it to high expectations on this season. You know, it's got a lot of competition to live up to. So my expectations are: is it going to make sense this time? Because the first time I watched it, it could have been the substances talking, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So was that just the movie not making sense, or is that my half-interested, dazed viewing of it?
But when you say it didn't make sense, do you mean like in an aggravating way, or just in a
just in
way?
A like, wait, what happened in the last 5 minutes? What did that all mean? That kind of thing. So we'll see. I want to watch it with just sitting down,
unmolested by chemicals.
Exactly.
Right.
And and see does it work in that context.
Well, we can ramble on for longer, but I say let's just turn it off and turn it back on and come back.
Let's do it.
All right. Here we go.
I was cleaning out the cartridge.
The Tron cartridge? What possibly is that reference to? Because it's arcade, isn't it?
I'm sure it's on Super Nintendo.
Oh,
somewhere.
The game?
Or NES. Come on.
Here we go. And we're back.
We're back.
Kev.
Out of the grid. We've been redigitized.
We've been digitized in the grid and then now redigitized.
Yes, we're back.
When we're back. Just like you just said.
Yeah.
Kev, when you were in the grid, when and how and where did you watch this?
I got the DVD from Netflix. In fact, it was a Blu-ray. Blu-ray from Netflix, disc delivery service. Watch it that way.
I got the DVD from the library. DVD from the library.
Just your constant source of entertainment. The
Indeed.
library. It's free.
Check it out, kids. The library.
Do it. It's a building.
Broadly speaking, initial thoughts. Heavy expectations. If you weren't paying attention 45 seconds ago, heavy expectations. What'd you think?
This movie still just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Broadly speaking, I was very underwhelmed.
Yeah, it's just it really gets sucked into its own visuals, but doesn't really know what to do with it.
Yeah, I think what it boils down to is that the story is very underserviced.
Oh yeah,
right. Where
anytime.
you see how this is like a rough idea for a story that was never polished out to a fine story. You know what I mean? It kind of gives me more appreciation of something like Conan, which I think you could compare these and say, oh, they're very simple stories, right? But it's like, well, Conan's story is just linearly, it's a nice linear curve up, you know what I mean? And this story is just like,
there's no curves, there's no valleys, there's no peaks, there's
just
it's just kind of there, you know.
And I will say visually, so let's there's two sides of this coin with this movie, right? There's the story and then there's the visuals. Visually, I think sometimes at their best, the visuals are great. I think at their worst, they're very confusing.
Yes,
because there were times where I had to rewind it and I'm like, what am I looking at?
Yep.
It's like, oh, this is a close up of the tank as it pivots from the outside.
Yeah, the colors do have a tendency to, in certain shots, it's just you don't really know what you're looking at.
Right, because a lot of things are like,
it's all just geometric lines and singular colors, mostly black, mostly white, a lot of blue, a lot of dark green. And yeah, there's some shots where you just don't really know what happened in it.
And just to further throw this thing under the bus, I found myself very bored at times. And honestly, if I'm being honest with you, Kev, and Kev, I could be honest with you.
Yes, you can.
If we weren't doing this for the podcast, I would have turned it off.
And I don't blame you. It's just, there's not much to really grab a viewer in it.
Yeah,
you know?
Like with Conan, like my phone was on the other side of the room. With Mad Max, I'm like, no one bother me, no one talk to me. I don't know, just do it. Who cares? Take my money. But with this movie, I was like, ooh, should I do the dishes?
Yeah.
It was hard to stay focused.
It is one of those movies. And am I going to do chores while this is on in the background?
Yeah,
but,
I didn't. Yeah. For the record, I didn't.
Yeah.
But
because we're professionals,
right?
We sit and watch.
And it wasn't. I don't feel like I was in a bad mood. I don't feel like I was distracted by other things going on in my life. I feel like I was just like, cool, time to watch Tron. I'm here, and yeah, it just wasn't there.
There's nothing to really hook you in. I think because they don't explain much in this movie. Like, we don't really know who anybody is and what they're doing.
Okay, let's get into the plot and characters. And let's start off with the plot. The movie is so in its own little world, and I think that's what you're alluding to right now, right? Like, it's as if there are no other computers other than the master control computer. It's as if there's no other companies. It's as if there is nothing else in the world that exists except for the things mentioned directly in this movie, right?
Exactly.
There is MCOM, there is the Kremlin, there is the White House, and those are the three computers on planet Earth.
And there's Finn's Arcade.
And there's Finn's Arcade.
It's like, that's it. This movie has a very, what we call in the screenwriting class, a narrow scope.
Yes.
Where it just, nothing exists outside of anything they talk about.
Right. And and this is kind of a character thing because the MCU is a character, but let's just get into it in terms of plot. The MCU is evil, Master Control Unit. It is interested in corporate takeovers, in stealing ideas of games. And so it's like this really, really bizarre, like high and low stakes. And it's really like immature idea of like someone can steal my idea.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's not stealing an idea is not intrinsically. It's like an idea is not really copyrightable, right? If I said I want to make a movie about an alien invasion, that's just an idea.
Yep.
The work is like, so there's this character and this is his background, and the aliens resurrect some zombies, and the zombies do this, and all the words I write associated with it. That's the material.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just a weird idea. Like, I had this idea for a game where you tanks shoot flying M's, and the computer stole it. And it's like, really?
What?
What are you talking about?
And yeah, it's a very classic 80s, like, big corporate versus the little guy.
Right.
You know, which is a timeless story, always will be, but done in a very 80s way, where it's like, they stole my computer idea, you
Right.
know? And that's, in 1982, that's probably pretty revolutionary, but you kind of look back on it now, and it's not aged very well.
And I will say, this movie hits a terrible intersection between too much plot, boring as hell, and confusing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's a roundabout.
There's way too much plot, but not a minute is spent telling you what's going on.
Right.
You know?
And then, like, they have this gun that can digitize things, literally.
Yep.
And it's just like, I'm like, in 2016, that's a bizarre idea. I couldn't even imagine what people thought about this in 82.
Yeah, it's, you know, they tested on an orange, and it's like, hey, you digitize an orange into what exactly?
Yeah.
And then it's like you re-digitize, or re-output it from the computer as an orange.
And it's tough because...
Oh, man. In what way does that benefit anybody? You know,
Right.
Is it like, okay, so now we can build things in the computer and export it as a thing? Is that what they're trying to do? But
So you can make infinite copies of a thing. So you don't have to
yeah.
grow oranges anymore. You just make copies of it, like how we do with movies.
Yeah. Which, you know, that's a potentially interesting thing.
But why does that require sacrificing a real orange?
Exactly. But we don't know if that's actually what that thing does, because they don't really tell us what it does.
And there's a separation between how we know computers to work. It's a bunch of binary code that is layered on top of, like, you know, different kinds of coding, C++ or what, you know, other things, blah, 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 blah. And in this world, it is like as if it's a fish tank full of stuff in the computer.
Well, in this, I had kind of an interesting thought watching it. This is almost a precursor to, like, Toy Story, in a way. Where this is like the secret world of the computer. Like, this is actually how computers work. You know? Like, this is Disney kind of really exploring that, like, fantasy world of, this is the real world we live in, but there's the secret world of, in the computer, it's like this weird government system, and there's prisons, and there's games, and stuff like that. And that's, like, the computer world. You know,
right?
But it's a very rough idea.
Except for it completely done in the most inelegant way.
Exactly.
Where Toy Story, the twist is the toys are alive, and they don't show that to humans for reasons that will go unexplained. But toys are alive, and when people aren't around, they all hang out and have little adventures. So it's like, it's one twist of the Nile away from where we're at right now.
But it seems like that was kind of Disney's first idea to really explore this world of, like, what are the secret worlds that are around us. And in 1982, everybody was obsessed with computers and Pong and arcade games, so that was an easy world to, like, and let's make a movie that it appeals to what people are talking about.
But the thing is, everything that happens outside of the Tron world, especially in the first half of the movie, because outside of the Tron world, the second half of the movie is like 35 seconds.
Yep.
It's completely garbage, right?
Yep.
It's completely worthy. Gag. I hated all of that, and I feel like this movie would have been, I think, better both artistically and commercially, in the sense of, like, enjoyable, if it just starts with homeboy getting sucked in the computer. You don't know how he got sucked in the computer. It's just, we start off with this computer world, they talk about users and stuff, and then he gets sucked in, and he's like, no, I'm a real person. And then we don't know, are we in a computer? Is it another dimension? Are we just in a fantasy sci-fi world? Is this what the world has turned into?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's like traveled through time or something. There's not enough mystery.
Exactly. It's just very... I just don't know what anybody's doing in it at any time.
So switching gears into the characters, right? Everyone is completely one-dimensional, except for Jeff Bridges.
Yep.
Who is killing it in this movie. Super charming. You want to be his friend. You know what I mean? But in terms of everybody else, it's I don't know, man. The sequel had a bad story and good visuals. This one, same thing. And same thing with the characters where, we're supposed to be rooting for them and then rooting for their avatars, and I found that to be very confusing.
Yep.
And some of them, it's like when they were wearing the avatar thing, it's like I didn't know. Like Tron is like his romantic rival.
Yeah.
That's dating his ex-girlfriend, and it took me like a really long time in the movie to figure that out.
It is hard to discern like who's who in this. Even anybody except Jeff Bridges, it's hard to tell. Like, wait, is that the guy from this scene who he was talking to? Oh, this is the programmer guy who was supposed to be the main character, but now it's Jeff Bridges.
Right,
but he's Tron, this legendary guy who is going to save the world
because he is the police on how the system communicates with other things, which makes sense because that's the problem with the system.
But again,
nothing. The noise of what you just heard was me and Kev looking at each other like, help. Help me.
It's just nothing. This movie gives you nothing. I can't follow heads or tails what anybody's doing in it, and it's hard to tell who people are. Mm-hmm. Their dialogue's kind of indecipherable, except for Jeff Bridges, because we know he's just a regular dude, mm-hmm. and you'll always want to go on an adventure with Jeff Bridges. Like, no matter what movie it is, no matter what character he's playing, you want to just take the ride with him because he's just so damn charming.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think that is apparent in this, right? Because when, you are rooting for his character as much or as little as you understand him. So, and I do like how they're alluding to, like, computery things. Like, there's a little floating character named Bit and Bite or whatever. Yeah. But very little of this is paid off. It's characters' motivations are strange because when they're in the computer, they're just trying to be their own program, but then those programs have nothing to do, so they're playing the games. It's just, I don't know.
It's the strangest government anybody's ever come up with, and I have no idea how it works.
That's another thing, is when you first see the master control, it's like a spinning dreidel kind of looking thing.
Which they parodied on South Park.
Yes, they did. When it's revealed, there's not a big reveal. And I kind of like that, because I don't think you need... It's not an awe-inspiring moment, and especially visually, it has not held up very well. But it's so... Like, it's not like, I feel like if this movie was made today, it would be like, there'd be like a fade up or like a camera pan, and then like the string violins come in and it's like, behold MCU, and it's like...
You kind of like that he just shows up?
I think...
They kind of build to him because you only hear his voice, mm-hmm. and then kind of the midpoint, the main bad dude talks to him, and it's like a screen with his face. But ultimately they get there and he is just kind of there. Yeah. He doesn't get his moment.
Yeah, I don't know if he...
See, I'm a sucker for those moments, so I want those moments.
I guess my fear would be that if they tried to make that a big moment, it would have just fallen flat. Yeah. Because it's so flat.
Especially in watching it today, where it's that he's just not that scary. He's a dreidel with a face, spinning.
I guess, and I mean, they do build to it. I think you're right. when they get to him, the symbols don't crash when they get to him, and I appreciate that little thing. All right. They try to let it speak for itself, and I think if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But they're not trying to cheat it. It's kind of like in Mad Max when fucking Humongous rolls up. It's like, dude, if you're not scared of this guy, there's no thing that we can do at this point to make you scared of him.
Exactly. And we already know what his gang is capable of. And
the Ayatollah of rock and rolla, the MCU.
That's the only intro you need.
Walk away. Leave the game.
Walk away.
Let's go to what is inarguably the strength and legacy of this movie, Tron Legacy, the visuals.
Yes,
we talked about it. I think the light cycle still looks good. That when they're playing that game, because I think they use the limitations well. Where
they do.
You have the light cycle. It feels like a 3D object, and when it turns on a dime, I think it's a very interesting take on living in a computer world where.
It's all very binary. It's like it goes up and down. Right. Like it doesn't skid out. It doesn't. Mm-hmm. It's just straight lines.
Right. Know? And when they get out of that game, you see that the light cycle can move like that. Yep. But just in the context of the game, it has to follow the grid because it's a computer world and they can break the rules of the real world. I feel like that was very well done and still holds up today. And just how it's like the trail of the thing is like a little wall and
Yeah.
you get smushed or whatever.
And yeah, people bonk it because bonk it.
Yeah, they'll bonk it.
They'll bonk it because I mean it absolutely looks like a computer, you know. But that's the whole idea.
But we're in a
They're
computer.
in a computer.
So it's okay.
So
That's the thing
it
is that-
makes sense.
And I think I'm coming across as a little bit more harsh than I am. If it looks like fake computer graphics and we're in a fake computer world, that jives.
Yep.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with the look of the light cycles. The problem is like when they shoot, when one of the light cycles hits the wall and the wall explodes and there's a crack in the wall, the inside of the crack and the outside wall are both the same shade of black.
Yep.
And you can't really tell depth anymore. It just looks, I thought at first it was just cracked. And then they drove through it, and I was like, "Oh, whoa, what? Like that was a hole?"
Yeah, you need like a different shade of black to really sell that this is a hole that they're going into, and also that hole just happens to lead to like the most important part that they
Right.
get to. It's who designed this place,
And then looking back on the way that scene was shot, it's like, yeah, they were telegraphing this, but just visually, I was like, no, that's not a hole, that's a crack.
Yeah.
You know. And so then they go through it, and then you see these really big empty vistas, and I feel like none of that works.
no,
It's very weird looking.
it's just you don't get a sense at any time how big this world is. You only get a sense of where you are in a certain scene. You don't get an idea of this is a vast computer world. They try and do it, but it just doesn't look very good.
No.
You know, you see Master Control's light going up out in the landscape, but then it's kind of all you get. You know, it's just very, very hard to latch on to what this place is.
I also want to know, is this the first movie with a gigantic blue light going up? Which has become a staple of movies?
I mean, it's kind of certainly in video games these days. It's like that's where we're going to, you know, and that's a really easy thing to say. That's how far we gotta go.
Well, I mean, in a video game, it makes sense, right? Because
Yeah.
that's a function of visual storytelling. In a movie, it's not necessarily always where we want to go. It might be where we need to go because that's where the bad guy is going to shoot these lasers up into the world. Like Fantastic Four, the newest one had that, right? Where it's like the bad guy's master plan is going to shoot a blue laser from this pile of rocks or whatever, you know? And I feel like that's a staple, a cliched staple
For
of
sure.
movies. Just, you know, the blue thing going up. Also, like, so when they're playing the game, when they're playing that racquetball game and the floor was disappearing, I didn't get that the floor was disappearing until the guy fell through the floor.
Exactly.
And
Because, again, it's the floor is a shade of blue, the hole is kind of a shade of black, but they're just not that different from each other. So it's really hard to tell. You know, are they getting points for hitting certain things? Are they? But yeah, it's making the floor disappear, but you don't really realize that. And in order to understand the stakes of that game, you have to realize that early. You know. And
Yeah.
It's, again,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
to realize this is what their goal is in this game. Again, this movie doesn't explain anything to you. It's these guys they got their highlight mitts and they just start throwing this ball, but we don't know even what the goal is of this thing.
And I imagine that there's people who probably rage quit this podcast already.
I'm sure they
But if
have.
you're still here, I get that to a child's mind, especially in the early 90s, when you're watching this on VHS and you're able to watch it over and over again, and perhaps on the second or third viewing, because you're familiar with where the movie's going to go, these things no longer present those as issues, because it's not confusing anymore.
Yeah.
Right? It's confusing. Probably the first viewing is confusing the way when you're a kid, any first viewing is where you don't know where the plot's going to go because you're not familiar enough with media to understand any of this. So it's like, it's confusing the way that every movie I've ever seen is confusing. And on a certain third and second one and fourth and fifth and 10th and 100th time, it's like, of course the floor is disappearing. I know what to look for.
Yeah.
But being an adult and not knowing what to look for, I just don't know what's happening, you know?
And you could argue that we're from Jeff Bridges' perspective of this is how he's experiencing the world. He doesn't even know what's going on. But we never really learn, but somehow he learns it. And
Yeah, because he knows.
We don't learn in an organic way.
Right.
And yeah, he knows more than we do
Yeah.
about it. It'd be different if he knew nothing about it and got sucked in. And then you can be like, we start playing this game, and like the guy throws the ball, hits his, like, you get a shot of his feet, and it hits the thing, and it disappears, and you see him like kind of trip over it, or you see like that it makes a hole.
You
and
see
then
him learning.
You get
He realizes,
it's like,
this is life
okay.
and death.
Yeah, so I need to I need to try and strategically get rid of these things so he falls down.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you never get that moment.
And it's in this moment that I think, is this what older people think of movies now? Like when older people, our parents' generations, people who are a little bit older than us, look at Transformers and the Avengers and Batman vs Superman and all these things, are all they seeing just a bunch of phony baloney nonsense that they don't understand?
Probably. But a lot of modern movies do go out of their way to actually get you in the headspace of these people, and this movie does not do that at all.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you're a kid and you just get transfixed by the visuals, I can see how this movie would be nostalgic for you. But that's all anybody ever remembers from it, is the visuals.
And I do want to say, the animated backlit rotoscope stuff, like their costumes, looks fantastic.
You never see anything like that before.
And you never seen anything like it since. You know what I mean? Like, except for in the sequel. But
it's a totally unique look.
right. I think it is very charming. And I do like the aesthetic of that, right? I like the idea of like this world where all outlines are neon.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. You know, like the helmet has all the little stuff. Like there's a great scene where the dude throws his data disc and it hits a guy in the head, and then his brains fall out, and his brains are a bunch of gears.
Yep.
That's cool as shit. There's a bunch of like neon gears.
Mm-hmm. It's an inspired idea.
I like that, and I do like how visually they balance the neon with like heavy dark blacks.
Oh yeah, the blacks are black in this movie.
Yeah, and I do like that. I think it's cool, and I think it's also the stylization. There's a good stylization of the movie. Like when Jeff Bridges gets freeze framed, that's a really cool thing where the laser hits him, and then they show it from a bunch of really like Dutch angles, and it's like they're really selling you on this visually. I just feel like it's just inconsistent. There's times where you're really impressed with that, and there's times where you can tell they're not thinking about that at all. One time when it's really impressive is when they're in the holding cells and the top of the cell is clear, and you're like, oh, it's like a pit. And then you see like a guard jab it, and you're like, no, it's glass, and the guard's walking on top of it. That's a really cool moment.
Yeah.
But that's just not everywhere. You know what I mean? It's not a fully realized crazy world. There's these little great like moments dropped in and around, but yeah,
it's a lot of good ideas that didn't get the treatment they needed. You know, it feels like the first draft, and just maybe no other drafts were ever done. And it's, you know, I'm sure they did plenty of drafts, but that's what this feels like. Like you have the general idea of what you're gonna do, but just don't have all the connective tissue to get there. And it's too bad because it could have been really cool.
It could have been. So let's get in some post Q&A questions, if you don't mind. Got some questions for you, Kev.
All right.
First question. Do you think it was a good idea to have people's programs be their doppelgangers in execution? Because I think conceptually we both can agree that it's good.
Yeah.
In execution,
it's too hard to discern who's who. And that hinders it because, you don't realize till maybe 10 minutes after you meet this character. It's like, oh, this is the guy from the real world.
Yes.
And it's hard to make those connections. You just don't recognize them.
Completely agree. What is the point of this movie? And I was writing this down, and I was working on this. Emily is sitting next to me on the couch. And I said that out loud, and she was like, that's a great question. Just like that. So I give it to you, Kev.
That's also a great question, because that's another question I had, is what do we learn at the end of this thing? And we just don't really learn much, except Disney tried something cool. Like it was concept before story from like day one on this. It's, can we make a movie in a world that looks like this? And we'll put a little characters and stuff in it. But it's just, nobody really learns anything.
No one really has an arc.
Nobody has an arc. Nobody grows. It doesn't have anything really to say, like, our computer's good or computer's bad. The closest it gets to any kind of, like, statement about what it's trying to do is Jeff Bridges at one point says, keep going no matter how crazy it seems. And it's like, it's just sort of that spirit of, you just got to keep fighting, you know? Fight what? We're not sure. But you just got to believe in yourself, man. You can do it.
I like that idea. I don't think the movie executes on it.
The story doesn't plan that at
all.
And
I think the ending of the movie personifies this, where it's like, why does he get spit out of the machine?
Yeah, it's like, well, they destroy Master Control.
Right. So then what happens to the virtual world? Like,
Yeah.
it's like the most interesting thing would be if he had to stay in the world and rebuild it. It's like, no, you're stuck.
Yep.
You know, and it's about maybe one day I'll get out and, you know, maybe this or that and the other thing. It would make more sense if he had given up in the beginning. This movie feels like a gigantic third act, right? Like, you know, in the beginning of the movie, he wants to take out the MCU, and he just spends the whole movie doing it, and he doesn't learn if that was the right thing to do. He doesn't learn, you know, maybe it's not about programs, it's about people. It's not about people, it's about programs, it's about companies, it's about ideas. There's nothing to gain there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, it needed to start in a different place or end in a different place. But it doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, you could build a story on when we first meet him, he's kind of just like, oh, whatever, I own an arcade. And, like, we know he's brilliant. We've heard all these stories about how brilliant he is, but he's just given up. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, what if he gets stuck? You know, what he knows if he destroys Master Control, he's stuck in the digital world. But then that's the jumping off point of now I can really make something with my life because I'm kind of a deadbeat right now.
Right. But
that could be an interesting story.
But and we'll get to him, and this is the perfect time to get into my nitpicks. His life in the arcade is awesome. He's like this rock star, and there's all these girls there. And like, listen, we go as a kid, growing up in the suburbs. My local golf land, mini golf, had an arcade. That arcade was full of boys playing Tekken, and
yes,
that's it.
Yep.
Also DDR, also early version of Guitar Hero.
Yep.
But there was no chicks there.
Not at the Wonderland Golf and Games in Spokane. Mm-hmm. No chicks.
Nowadays, me and you will check out Neon Arcade in Pasadena. Shout out, Neon Arcade, Pasadena. If you're in the LA area, check it out. You do $10 worth of your time. Great place. You see girls there, right? But it's a very different vibe.
Exactly.
You know,
well, they're actually playing the games. In this movie,
they're like groupies.
Yeah,
they're like
groupies.
They're like arcade betties.
Exactly.
They're arcade ring rats.
Arcade lot lizards. Let's throw that one out there.
I'll take it. And I feel like this movie is not artsy enough. Like, I need some anxiety. I need something to be stated about like power or about creativity or about, you know, we talked about this. There's no need to like totally get back into this, but I just don't think that there's enough there meat. It's all sizzle and no steak.
Yep.
I need some steak. So Emily walked in when we were when I was watching the light cycles thing. And she goes, ugh. And I'm like, what? And she goes, this looks terrible. And there's a beat. This is terrible. No wonder why they remade it. Why is everything gray? This is terrible. Because all their faces are black and white.
Yep.
Yeah. She did not like this.
I had a feeling. Christy kind of felt the same way.
Oh, interesting.
Just sort of going like, what is this? I'm going to go do something else.
Do we want to talk about awesome moments?
I only have one awesome moment.
Give it to me.
And it's where Finn's Arcade is located. Right next door to Honey Kettle Fried Chicken in Culver City.
What?
It's Acacia in Culver City. That's the building.
What? Which one's Acacia?
That's next door to Honey Kettle. It's like it's a bar, but they have kind of fancier food.
And on the corner?
Yeah, that's Finn's Arcade.
Oh my
We've walked by it like 100
God.
times.
Mind
But
blown.
as soon as they had that establishing shot of the arcade, I was like, wait a minute. That's familiar. And I paused it, typed it into Google, and they gave me the exact address. I was like, I know exactly where that is. Just down the street from my house.
My new goal in life is to buy that location, make a place called Finn.
Make it Finn's Arcade. Or Flynn's Arcade.
Yeah.
So.
And, probably put a bar in there for money.
Well, sure. It's 21st century. There you go.
My moments of awesome are 3. Awesome the first, Jeff Bridges, all things. Awesome the second, cameras flying around and like they move really fast, especially when we're doing like animated shots. I like that. There's a real whip to it. You know, it's like there's like an urgency there, which I really like. And I feel like you don't really see live action or animated. You know.
Yeah.
And I think animated, it's like you can totally get away with it because it's not like you have to worry about shaking or vibration or anything. And then neon thing that awesome the third, the neon layering effect really works well. Just to add to that, like some of those layers are like 30 layers deep, 30 layers of film. You got like the people, and you got the outline of the helmet, and you got the inside of the helmet, and you got the background, and you got the background things and this and that. And the other thing is like 30 layers of film, compress it down, one 65mm print. Pretty cool.
Yep. And I did like the design of the old guy's avatar. That was pretty cool. Where he's like, he's in the rotating bay, and it's all the stairs leading up to him, and he's like huge, like Jabba the Hutt.
Completely. But again, I think he was executed before I realized who he was.
Exactly. And again, why is he in that? I don't know. But it looks cool. Looks like something out of Dune, you know, but it's just cool looking.
This is rare for to say, but I feel like if this movie was full of movie stars, I think it would have been better. Because then you would have known who everyone
exactly
is. So if that was Samuel L. Jackson, you would say, oh, Samuel L. Jackson, he's the weird pyramid thing.
Yep.
You know, and if the bad guy was was
Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, Malcolm McDowell. There he is in the real world. Here he is here.
Exactly.
Also, Malcolm McDowell. Great.
Put him in every movie.
Were your expectations met?
Yeah. Well, not really, because I wanted it to kind of make more sense than it did Under the Influence. And it just really didn't. Again, watched it totally sober.
And did the last 5 minutes make more sense this time, or
no?
No, my expectations were to be blown away, and I was not blown away. And you may say that's an unfair pedigree to put on this movie, but this movie is a cult classic. It's a seminal movie to a lot of people.
It's referenced a lot.
Like you see
Family Guy has a joke a week about Tron. Usually, it's like all the time.
Yeah. And, like you've seen clothing and shoes and all kinds of stuff be influenced by video games, influenced by Tron. So I just feel like I just wanted more from this. And I don't think we're being unfair. I think
so.
We came into this with open minds, and, it's just, I think it was, to this movie's credit, because of what it is, I think it was in the right place at the right time. Is it a classic? In our opinion, no. And this feeds into my last question of what we always do. Do you like the movie? Does it work? And I think we both of us say no. It did work in '82, and it blew minds, and it, kicked ass on fucking Laserdisc, and influenced a generation of filmmakers, and that's really good. But in terms of being a classic, I don't think you can say that.
No, there's just nothing more to discover in it, and it doesn't say really anything, so you can't really apply it to any modern day thinking.
And I want to be clear, I think we're both on the same page here. It's not lazy. You can see that people worked very hard on this movie on a technical level.
This is they took the hard road to do everything, especially in 1982.
Exactly.
And the years leading up to it.
Right, because you learn how, the way that they...
you can't shortcut anything that they did.
Right. And I don't want to take anything away from them. They're talking about the light cycle sequence. It's not like nowadays where, you're dragging things and moving it with a mouse and setting keyframes and stuff. This was, you set keyframes, but then you mapped it out with keyframes, and you had to do the math for everything else. So you had six digits for the light cycle. You have the thing where it is, and then it's forward, backward, side to side, and the pitch, the in yawn. And so you had to put, for every frame it was on the screen, you had to put all of those numbers in. So if it starts at, location 1, then it's 2, then it's 7 because it's sped up, and you're skipping some stuff. So you're doing, so you have to figure out, and then you have to fill in all of that math. And the director was talking about how they figured that out. They went back to their office, fucking ran some calculations or whatever, filled out spreadsheets by hand, because this is before Microsoft made spreadsheet software.
Yep.
Gave it to the animators, who are computer people, not animators, and they hand typed all of that in. Then you output it all and saw if it worked.
And if it didn't,
then you have to start over again.
Completely over and figure out where it did.
Yeah, where it
fucked up.
So to say that it's like, the sad part of it is that the effort that was put out does not completely hold up 30 years later, and the most important parts of a movie, the characters, the plots, the stories, are not refined. The lack of polish is just like, it's a fucking rough rock.
Yep.
And I want a sweet river stone.
And it could have been, but maybe just too many. I don't want to throw anybody under here, but just maybe too many computer people, maybe too many computer minds working on it, and not enough human minds saying, but this is, James Cameron calls them really smart, stupid people.
Yeah.
Where they said, well, the numbers say it works, so it works. But if you're watching it, you have to know if it doesn't work. And maybe there just wasn't enough people watching it saying this doesn't work.
And I mean, to their credit, they were really pushing the envelope in a way that no one else was. So, again, I'm glad it inspired people. I'm glad that they pushed themselves, and I'm glad they got the attention for that in their day. But am I ever gonna watch the movie again? Negative.
Nope. Not gonna happen.
Crazy fan theory sequel pitch.
Don't really have any fan theories. Sequel pitch. The Tron Legacy sequel took all the worst habits of this movie and added CGI to it. You know, and it's they really had a chance to have. They could have the cake of the world and how good it looks, and it does look really good in that sequel, Tron Legacy. Claudio Miranda was the DP on that, brilliant director of photography. But
Again,
you couldn't hire a scriptwriter to tell a coherent story.
And the world
again.
There's a great scene in that where the guy first gets sucked into the computer, and then they these 4 ladies in sync walk up to him all weird and robotically, and they cut off his clothes with their finger, glows a welding torch, but it just cuts his clothes off, and then they make him new clothes, and they all walk away weird. And I'm like, yes, this whole movie's gonna be like this, and it wasn't.
Yep.
I just need it to be weird.
Yep. Just let your freak flag fly, folks.
And I guess if I was to pitch a remake, I would want to pitch a remake. I don't want to be attached to what's been created. And I would say just start with a guy being sucked into this world. Through osmosis, we can determine that the world is probably inside of a computer, but it's not necessarily. And you can make him a slacker, and it's all about him, learning to be proactive, and having willpower and stuff. And you can make it about death, or about conquering your fears, or about confronting death.
Yeah.
Because he's stuck in this weird limbo. You know what I mean? And explore that aesthetic through an idea thematically. Because even if it doesn't make complete sense, even if it's a little bit Argento on us, right, where it's more about light and color than about literal plot, that's okay. But just service it.
Give us something, anything, please. We can only look at neon lights for so long.
Yep. And no real world stuff. Don't need any real world shit.
I'm totally fine with it being completely in the computer.
Yeah. Stay in the computer.
Yep.
Like a nerdy kid on a Saturday afternoon. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening to our conversation. Come back and join us next episode. Follow us on Twitter at Speaking Cinema. We are on Stitcher, iTunes, rate, review, subscribe. Listen to Jibber Jabber every single Monday.
We don't take a week off.
We don't. This episode written by me, Mr. Jibber Jabber. Music by Jeff Russell. Kev is your host. I am your host. For me, for Kev. We'll see you next time. I don't want to live in a world without a graphical interface. End of line.